Now, Jack, is it okay? You have all the time that you need. I'll cut you off at a certain time, but this is the sermon today. So, but also at the same time, we'll follow up with it. If any of you have questions or something like that, we'll have time for a couple of those. So, speak loud and clear, and just do what God leads you to do.
About 2 months ago, Pastor Zach asked me if I would give my testimony, and here I am. I think I want to pray before I start.
Good.
Hi, Heavenly Father, I thank you for the life you've given me. I thank you for your presence at key times in my life. I ask that you help me remember the details, and also that you get the honor. Yes, in Jesus' precious name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
My upbringing is a little different. It isn't the normal childhood upbringing. And so I need to go into detail from the beginning about God's influence in our family and in my life. My parents, my mother was the daughter of Swedish immigrants. My dad was the son of a traveling evangelist, and he took his whole family with him. He ended up usually with a big car and all the baggage and 5 girls and my father, and he went to wherever he was called to go. And so he's quite a guy, and he was a pulpit pounder. He started out as a blacksmith, and somehow he had to pound the pulpit while he was preaching for emphasis, so he got pretty well known. Anyway, my parents were really special, very special people, and when they got married, they decided as a couple to be missionaries, and they went to Nyack under the Christian Missionary Alliance to get trained as missionaries. I'm not sure if the Christian Missionary Alliance said anything about starting a family at that time, but my oldest sister was born before they took off for France to learn the language. They were designated to be in French Indochina, Vietnam, and before that happened, my oldest sister was born, so they took a young baby with them. And then over in France, as they studied the French language, I was born in Paris. And so here they had 2 little kids. I remember, my memory of course didn't start for a while, but I remember a nanny who took care of my older sister and myself. And my parents were busy with missionary work. But what happened almost immediately after was the outbreak of the Second World War, and the Japanese invaded the Southeast Asia area in China, and they were getting awfully close. We were in Hanoi, we were stationed in Hanoi, and so my parents decided they needed to get out of there, and there was a Christian Missionary Alliance headquarters on the south end of the Philippine Islands, in Mindanao. So they headed for Mindanao. The only thing is, the Japanese were already there. So we were going from the frying pan to the fire, I guess. And we tried to get together with natives and people that were trying to avoid the Japanese and exist in spite of them. And so we were on the run in the mountains of Mindanao. And then Joan was born. So we had, my parents had 3 little kids, and we were on the run from the Japanese. And I remember a shack with bamboo supports and grass roof and walls and a big grass bed, and that's what gave us shelter in the mountains. And I I think that's where Joan was born. I don't remember exactly the details of that, but I'm sure it was. And here I am about 5 years old, and I was evidently taking a nap or something. I was laying on my back on the bed, and I looked up the ceiling, and here's this big snake that was as long as the ceiling. It was crawling through the grass roof, and when the natives got it down and killed it, it took several men to hold it up to show how big it was. But that was, when they move around, the pythons move around, they're usually hungry. So this was quite an experience, and I didn't sink into me. I don't recall screaming or anything. I think somebody noticed at the same time I did, and there was a big snake. Anyway, we got contacted by the Japanese that we needed to give ourselves up. And it made a lot of sense at that time because the guerrillas and the natives were trying to avoid the Japanese and provide a hindrance to their advancing and success. And with 3 little kids, my parents with 3 little kids, it didn't make sense to try and follow the guerrillas around and follow the natives and, you know, stay out of the hands of the Japanese. So we gave ourselves up and went into Davao. And Davao was an internment camp, and right away, my dad had kind of a carpentry background because my mother's dad was a carpenter, and he built houses where we lived in St. Paul. He owned about half a block of land there, and he started out with a cornfield and a chicken coop, but then he ended up building a house for himself and one for his wife's sisters, and then one for himself, another one for himself, and he rented out the big house, and then my dad and he combined to build our house. Anyway, my dad knew about structures, and so he put up, with the natives, he put up a bamboo shack, which was just that. It was bamboo supports and grass roof and walls, and a pretty nice shack for shelter, actually. And so we were sheltered there, but then we had to give that up. And we went in to Davao, and wouldn't you know, my dad gets involved with some men there, and they build another shack. So we're in another shack, a bamboo and grass shack. And all of a sudden, the Japanese realized there's too many people in that internment camp. So they needed to move a bunch of us to another camp. Well, we didn't know where we were going, but we were shoved into the hold of a ship. And the reason they put us in the hold was because they didn't want anybody jumping into the ocean and trying to escape. They didn't want that freedom on deck. So everybody was crammed into this place. I think I got claustrophobia from this experience. We couldn't stand up. We had to either lay down or sit up. And then the rats had to rule the place. They were running across the beams, and they were running across us. And we were in there for quite a while. We had to travel from Mindanao to Luzon, which was the north end of the Philippines. And they were taking us, we found out they were taking us to Manila and Santa Tomas. Santa Tomas was a school campus, but it was walled in and was being used for an internment camp. And there were thousands of people there that were being collected and held by the Japanese. So we arrived after this horrible experience in this ship hold, and we got to Santa Tomas, and wouldn't you know, my dad got together with some guys and built another shack. There were buildings there from the campus, but they were full. I mean, people were in those rooms and using them, and so we needed another shelter, and we built another shack. So this is the third shack that we were in. And at the same time, the kids in that camp or that area kind of had freedom to wander around. I don't know why. I don't know why some people weren't watching this, but I was running with other kids and my sisters, and one time my little sister was about 2 years old, and we were babysitting her. Well, she rolled down an embankment and into a sewage drainage ditch, and we couldn't see her. We could see the sewage moving, but we couldn't see her. And so we hurriedly got somebody to pull her out and wash her off, and she came out none the worse for wear, really, because she's the one that's been doing extreme sports, Berkey binders, and she does a little of everything, and she's pretty active, and to this day. And but that was a real scare, because all of a sudden she was there and she wasn't there, and this area was moving. I knew she was underneath. And what was I, about 5 years old? I guess I didn't think I could go in there and pull her out. So anyway, we got some help there, and kind of a miracle that she was okay. Another incident, I was with another kid, and we were looking in this hole with water in it, and it was full of frogs and tadpoles and interesting things for me. I kind of get a kick out of that, you know. And so I'm leaning over the edge, and he's leaning over the edge, and all of a sudden, I'm falling over the edge. And down I go, and I try to stay up, but it's deeper than I was tall. So I sink down to the bottom. In the meantime, I'm looking around at the same things I was looking at from above. And I had kind of a peaceful feeling. I was thinking afterwards in my life that that's not a bad way to go. It's kind of a peaceful way to go. You settle down to the bottom, and you know, and you're out. And I woke up, and I was on the top, up on the ground, and someone was on my back and pushing on my back and lifting my elbows. The old resuscitation method, and it worked. I was spitting out water. Pretty soon I was up and around. So those experiences to me stood out. But there's a lot of things going on there. In our camp, we were starving because we weren't getting very much food. We were down to, at the end, well, my dad was under 100 pounds. When I got weighed, when I got on a scale after we got liberated, I was 27 pounds at the age of 7.5. And so we were all starving, and we were also beset by tuberculosis, diphtheria, typhoid. I had whooping cough and tuberculosis at the same time. They had an infirmary set up with tarps and tents outside. And so I remember being in a tarped area, and they were checking me out. I was coughing real bad with whooping cough, and so that was the procedure. If somebody needed help, they had this tented area and tarped area where they had dividing areas where they checked people out. And I'm sure there were some doctors in the prisoner group, because there were people from all over in that camp, and there were some experts, I'm sure. And so that's the way they handled the sick in the problems with health. And as far as I know, there was no technical equipment like scopes and diagnostic equipment. You just spent some time being looked over, and whatever medicine was available. I think the Red Cross was sending packages in. The natives kept contact with us. I'm not sure how they did it, but there was a group that met regularly and talked about camp conditions, and also talked to natives somehow. It was either through the walls or some way of communicating. So they knew when the Red Cross shipments were coming, and if we didn't get them, it was because they were intercepted. And we were getting so bad nutritionally that we were just skin and bones, and we were down to we lined up for 1 scoop of rice a day, and we'd line up at the garbage can for anything left over at the mess where the Japanese soldiers ate. So we were looking for things to eat. And I remember, for example, grabbing a handful of salt. There was a salt container on a wall, and I grabbed a handful and I was sucking on that. It made me feel less hungry, I guess. And yet, in my opinion, I didn't feel like I was suffering that much, because I had kids to play with, and we had freedom to roam around. Well then, toward the end, we found out that they were lining up internment camp prisoners and shooting them down, and they were going to do some mass burials. I think a couple have already happened. And so I think it got word out to the American forces, and they sent the armored battalion. And in the middle of the night, there was all this noise and tracers all over the place. And I woke up and I went to the stairs in front of this main building, and I was standing there looking at everything. You know, tracers, it was colorful, it was like 4th of July. I didn't know what 4th of July was, but it seemed like it after I got familiar with 4th of July celebrations. And what happened is they spent several days trying to get rid of snipers and buildings, at the top of the buildings, and clean out the camp of all the Japanese. And it wasn't an easy job. They just had an armored battalion. They didn't take over the area. The Japanese were all around the San Tomas area. And then all of a sudden they started shelling because they had the buildings zoomed in, or, you know, targeted. And so most of the casualties in the camp happened when they started shelling the buildings. Well, my dad, I'm not sure if he used somebody else to help him, but we dug a hole in the ground because our shank was just sitting out there in a wide open space, and we had 2 entrances, and we sat in there when we heard the shells coming. Of course, they told us that if you heard a shell, you were safe. It wasn't going to hit you, but if you didn't hear them, those are the ones that hit you. But anyway, when we heard the shells coming, then we'd go into that dirt hole in the ground with 2 entrances, and we'd sit there until it was all over. And that was a regular occurrence every day. But we survived that, and there was no direct hit on us. But there was some direct hits on the buildings, and there were a lot of people that were killed or injured that way. In the meantime, everybody was starving, so people were dying of malnutrition too. And I really didn't, I don't think the kids were informed that much as to what was going on. I was at the end there where we had that armored battalion come in. I was about 7 years old. And it took until, that was the middle of winter, like January. And then it took till May until we were ready as far as getting food in ourselves and recovering physically. I recovered in a hurry. As long as the food was available, I started filling out real fast. And so we were in pretty good shape in May, and then they put us on a transport ship to go to San Francisco. I didn't know where we were going, but I knew we were on a ship going to the U.S., going to America. And all we could ask as kids is, where's America? And, you know, we didn't know where it was. Well, in the meantime, we were told to watch for periscopes on the ship, and so we had our eyes out for periscopes because there were submarines around, and we just happened, we didn't get hit. But the most amazing experience that I ever had in my life happened on that ship. And it was a case where I was playing with another kid my age, and we were playing hide and go seek, and we were trying to hide where the other person couldn't find us. Well, that was hard on a level area on a ship like that. There aren't that many hiding places, so I got the bright idea, I'm going to climb up above him. He won't know where I'm at, you know. Well, we had dried peas that we got somehow. Food at that time was plentiful, so I had a handful of dried peas, and I was going to toss a dried pea at him, and he wouldn't know where I was. I'd be above him, and he wouldn't know enough to look up. Well, after I climbed up several rungs of the ladder, I was about as high as the ceiling here, and I had my arm around a smokestack, and I was on the smokestack platform. Well, then I leaned out, I saw him go by, I leaned out to throw the pea, and all of a sudden I was airborne. I was falling. And the only thing I had time to say, Jesus, save me. And that's what I said. I said, Jesus, save me. And then I also noticed that I was head first. And I felt so in God's hands that I didn't even try to correct my body position. I was going head first on a hard deck, and there was even a steel beam down there that I might have hit with my head. And the next thing I know, I'm coming to. I didn't feel any collision. And I'm coming to, and I start screaming like crazy because I thought I was close to dead or dying. And they checked me over. I didn't even have a bump on my head. I had no scratch, nothing wrong with me. Figure that out. Anyway, it was a lesson for me, and it's been a lesson my whole life, that if your faith is strong enough, God is there. If your faith is strong enough, God is there. And He will take care of you, if it's His will. And that's the lesson that I've learned, and it's been with me my whole life. When we got to San Francisco, we managed to find out where America was, and we kept asking, because we were in San Francisco, it was part of America. We didn't know where America was. We kept asking where, all the way over to St. Paul, we kept asking where America was. Well, when we got to St. Paul, where our family was, then what happens next? I didn't have any formal education, so they put me in a kindergarten class. I was 7.5 years old, and I found out I had a temper. And older kids were teasing me because I was in with the kindergartners. Well, then I got in some fights. When I had to pray to God to, try and take care of my temper so it wouldn't be so bad I get in fights. So I did need some help with that. Anyway, as I grew up, we were across the street from a playground, and I spent all kinds of time outside. We didn't have TV, so that didn't interrupt me at all. I loved the outdoors. Then I found out I loved sports because we'd play pickup games of anything, whoever showed up. And it didn't have to be any special game, didn't have to be any number of kids. And it didn't have to be any age. You could be little or big. We managed to get along and play sports. And so I got kind of a real love for sports and the outdoors. I also had a trapping friend that I had a newspaper route, and we both had a route, and we'd pick up the bundles and deliver as fast as we can, and we'd run our trap route. And we did that for this was in the beginning of, or the end of elementary school. And we did it in high school too. But what I found out in high school is there's organized sports, so I ended up going out for every organized sport I could. And I loved it. I loved the competition. And so that's what got me into my profession. When I graduated from high school, I considered the schools I would like to go to, and Bethel came out on top because I had a discount for being a preacher's kid. And also it was in town, it was in St. Paul and close. And so I went out, I went to Bethel, and I loved it there. There was the Christians there, and they had a Christian faculty, and some very good experiences there. I joined the male chorus. We went around 5-state area, usually having concerts in male chorus, and that was a great experience. And the people that I met and were friends with were just great, and that really developed me. And I ended up getting certified as a teacher in general science, but I didn't like the classroom. I didn't feel that I belonged in the classroom. So I went to the University of Minnesota and picked up a physical education minor and a certification for coaching. And that was it. That was my field, and I spent the rest of my career at the middle school level, which I fit to. I felt I fit in with those middle school kids. A lot of people feel they don't. But I fit right in there, and I taught Phi Ed, and I got to know all the kids because they all come to Phi Ed. And they're, you know, you get to know them because they're running around, and their behavior's different, and you really get to know them, and you get to know their names. When you see them in the hall, you know their name. And if you're in a classroom teaching a science class, you don't get to know everybody. You get to know those kids in your class. But so this was great. I was getting to know the kids, and I enjoyed my profession, teaching Phi Ed, and then coaching every season. And I ended up coaching a lot of different sports just because nobody else was available, because they're looking for coaches at that level. I don't know how it is now, but anyway, that was all the way to retirement. And I worked in St. Paul. In fact, I started out in the school I graduated from. It used to be Harding, but it turned into a middle school, so the smallest part. And when I got a job there, and a great experience. I know my life has been full of pluses, but since, well, what I haven't talked about is my conversion. My dad was a pastor in the East Side, Johnson Parkway Baptist. He pastored a church that was a Baptist General Conference church, and they were affiliated with Bethel. And my mother played the piano, and because of that, she got me singing. So all of a sudden, I was singing in church. And then my dad preached a sermon that really hit me. He said, you need to make a commitment as a Christian. You need to ask for forgiveness for your sins, and you need to make a commitment with the Lord. And I got on my knees by the bed at night, and I thought, I got to be serious because it's important. And I prayed to God. I asked for forgiveness for my sins. I asked Him to be with me, and that I was committed to Him. And then I went to bed, went to sleep. Well, I woke up, and I felt a spirit. I felt the Spirit, and I felt love. And it was different. I mean, I can understand why people speak of a conversion, because it was a conversion for me. And from then on, I've had lots of ups and downs, but I felt that God has been in my life and close. And for that reason, I led a pretty good life in that way. But a lot of mistakes. I learned the hard way. I learned by making mistakes and suffering the consequences. I've done that a lot. So anyway, that's it. So if you have questions, or I tend to be long-winded because I got to recall things.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah. Any questions, quick, for Jack that you might have? Well, again, and thank you.
I got a question. How old were you when you made that conversion? And
About 12.
oh, you were that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Good age. Well, thank you for sharing. And again, a large part of the reason for doing this is, number one, maybe some of you who are older are used to more stories like this, but folks who have this experience in our midst and right around us, they're dwindling. There's not as many of them anymore. And I think we can sit side by side, even for years, with somebody we think we know and not know really what all that God has done in their life or what they've gone through. And I think it's important for us to know one another, but also hear the impact of, yes, if your faith is strong, God is there. And I think if Jack could give anybody advice for how to live their life, it would be that. Go ahead, Sam, please.
Yeah, Jack didn't say anything about that, but one of the blessings that I had as a pastor of this church is when Jack came. He's been a foundational member of the church and an inspiration and a help and just a steady encouragement as we've gone through from the time he first came here. And
Every day.
whether it was getting here early to make